Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Robots and Red Tape. As always, I am your host, Nick Schutt. And before we get going, really want to thank everybody out there for listening. You guys are the best part of this podcast, and I appreciate you guys coming along this journey with me. It's been super fun and really looking forward to continuing it with all of you guys. So today, happy to have my friend Caindec with me here today. Cal, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Nick. I'm doing great.
Awesome, man.
Good to be here.
Dude, really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're doing a whole lot of really cool stuff in the legal case management space, but you have a really extensive background across technology. So for folks that don't have the opportunity to know you yet, man, you mind telling everybody out there a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got here?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been a tech entrepreneur for my career
Hmm.
and have the benefit of just being interested in a lot of technology. So, I have started my career back in networking and telecommunications, built a lot of great companies in the early days of the internet, worked in uh, 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 cloud computing and built a cloud computing company that um, provided infrastructure as a service and also data centers, cybersecurity. I mean, really all over the place, but they've all been at different junctures that are really interesting points in the technology evolution. And now I'm at Clarra,
Hmm.
where I'm a co-founder and CEO of a legal tech startup that provides uh, case management and for really for law firms and a lot of other businesses, services businesses.
Absolutely, man. No, that's really exciting and really appreciate that background. Thinking about as obviously you've been in and around the space for a long time, as you think about like the dot-com boom and the cloud era, what about this AI wave feels different to you, and what feels the same?
Well, I'll say I think what feels the same is that what we're going through and what we're experiencing today with AI isn't going to be how we'll really be using it in the future. When I think of when the internet first really became used and commercialized, there were different companies that came out that no longer exist. Like there were um, uh, e-commerce shopping cart companies. There were tons of those. There
Mhm.
were consulting companies that just built businesses around helping other enterprise companies build shopping carts. Of course, all of that just got built into websites
Mhm.
and got absorbed into how you kind of just build an internet into your business. And I feel the same way with AI. You have so many AI companies that do these very specific small things. But really, AI itself as a platform and a technology is just going to be built into everything.
Mhm.
And many of the very specific things, whether it's companies that are doing just drafting or just research or timekeeping optimization, I think all of those will simply become just capabilities built into other applications.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yep.
I'm inclined to agree with you, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I think what I see as different is that it's so transformational for
Mhm.
businesses. The other big waves of the internet, cloud computing, and uh, collaboration and productivity applications, all of those were really transformational for many businesses. But I think what's different is the
Mhm.
speed of change. And before you saw things changing over the course of years, and now you're seeing that change, in the course of months. 3 months goes by, and it really makes you rethink everything. So,
Absolutely. No, and I know. We were just before we started talking about some of the new tasks that Claude has released, recently, and how that is fundamentally changing a lot of the thing, a lot of how uh, you are able to work with these tools and actually perform work. You want to speak on kind of that a little bit, and how do you see like that? Do you think
Yeah.
things like tasks are going to be largely what some are going to kill some of these highly niche businesses, or do you think it's just going to be more like how do you see
Yeah.
these standalone models being used
Right.
as AI is just built into everything?
Well, I mean, yeah. So Claude Anthropic came out with 12 new legal specific skills that it made available and through their plugins. Um, and what that means is, in addition to having their standard legal plugin that does contract review, briefs and some basic legal functions, these 12 new plugins are designed for different practice areas. So employment, IP, general litigation, and they just provide much more specialized uh, uh, skills, if you will, in doing things. And so you can use Claude Cowork, for example, to prep for a deposition. You can use it to do a strategic brief or analyze risk and strategy around a case. So I think a lot of its basic capabilities will put pressure on many of the hundreds of AI legal tech companies that are out there that have built very, very small niche products, because you can largely do that, and Claude will do a better job of it just standalone than those. And even companies as large as Harvey and Lagora, I think you're seeing pressure on them.
Mhm.
You're seeing pressure on many SaaS companies, even Salesforce, that provide applications where people are questioning, how are they going to be able to keep up with all of the development of AI and vibe coding and being able to build applications. So I think with Claude Cowork and the new skills, it just makes it easier to use more functionality from the tool itself instead of specialized tools. I
Mhm.
think where we think it becomes, really critical is in integrating that type of tool with other systems. Like
Mhm.
for us, Clara, case management, we see our clients, we have AI built into our um, system,
Mhm.
but we also connect directly with Claude, and you can use Claude to eh, query and ask any question that you want to of the data within Clara. And that becomes very powerful because you can say, you know, um, compare the productivity of my team and help me with resource planning. You can say, what are the most profitable cases that I have, and what are the practice areas that I should reevaluate? What
Mhm.
are um, really really anything, and it can just query the case management platform. So
Mhm. No,
yeah.
that's awesome, man. It's absolutely fascinating to watch this kind of development in real time and watch it evolve. And I know that one of the major difficulties, let's say, as it relates to implementing a lot of these systems at at law firms, but not just law firms, companies in general, is the fragmentation of their data and their data infrastructure. How big do you think that gap is between AI capability and organizational readiness now? And in addition to that, man, what do you think? Um, how do you think that fragmented data will impact the productivity, or let's just say the usefulness of a lot of these AI tools within organizations?
Mhm. That's a great question. We work with law firms of every size, from a law firm with, say, 10 attorneys on up to a big corporate law firm with, um, you know, 1,500 attorneys, and also legal departments of large global companies. And what we found is that no matter what size company it is,
Mhm.
a lot of a lot of departments still manage their data using email,
Mhm.
spreadsheets, and siloed information in applications. And that fragmentation, right, is it makes it difficult for AI systems to deliver their full potential. For example, if you have if someone's managing all of their deadlines on a spreadsheet and they have all of their emails in Outlook in folders, but someone else has their emails in their folders and they're all different. The your you know Chat GPT or Claude are going to find it difficult to piece all of that information together.
Mhm.
So our feeling is for many companies, their readiness, your AI readiness, has a lot to do with how well you've organized your data. And that often is just the first step. How
Mhm.
do you get your employees to begin using a single system where everything can be tied in and understood um, better by, say, Claude, right? And that fragmentation that we have today, you're seeing the impact of that because most of the use cases that we hear about with AI and legal have to do with um, summarization, research and summarization of documents, they're uh, uh, drafting. They're very document specific. They're not really looking at all of the information across a law firm that it would consider. So,
Yeah. No, and how many organizations do you think, and you're not just from a legal or like a case man or your current role, but over your
mhm,
career, understanding the evolution of data infrastructure, what percentage of organizations do you think really have that together, right? Like how
mhm.
many people are really have their data infrastructure locked down versus how many don't?
I think it's very small. I think it's very small, and you have this, I think this challenge for a lot of companies because not just looking at legal, but if you look at services businesses in general, many of them are using really old SaaS applications, right? That maybe were developed back in the 80s and 90s that they're still using today. And some companies are using, large companies are using, um, you know, SAP and Oracle, and um, but invariably those systems don't do everything that the employees need them to do. So they start to create a small spreadsheet to track something, and
Mhm.
that spreadsheet turns into an Airtable, and before you know it, they're running part of their business all dependent on a spreadsheet. And we found this over and over in really large companies, even large ones like that are managing global litigation. They may be managing billions of dollars in liability, but they're really taking that information and status updates from all of their operating companies,
Mhm.
sending it in via spreadsheets, and it's very, very fractured.
Mhm.
So I think I would say the vast majority, 90+% of companies still do not have their data organized in a way to leverage AI um, effectively.
Yeah, man. I've heard similar things from other folks as well. And do you think that's because of it's always been viewed as a cost center as opposed to an asset?
I mean, I think that's part of it. I think also um, uh, uh, people look for an easy, like to adopt things that are easy,
Hmm.
right? Um, it's easy it's easy to file something in your Outlook folder. It's easy to use a spreadsheet. What's not easy to do is to find something that your users will adopt that allows you to consolidate everything onto a platform. And businesses just don't have oftentimes just the patience or the control to do that
Hmm.
for all of the use cases that their employees have. So employees tend to take it into their own hands.
Hmm. Yeah, man. No, if considering that's like the massive issue, right? The massive bottleneck with adoption, for organizations, what is a, large, especially large ones, right? That have lots and lots of data and lots of systems and all over. And what's a realistic implementation roadmap look like in your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, it depends. For us, our implementations tend to be a couple of months, 2 to 3 months.
Hmm.
And it's just easier, I think, partly because of the way we built the system to be easy to integrate and use. But for um, for organizations, for example, let's say that you're um, a legal department, an agency, right? A government agency or legal department that it has a bunch of manual processes that you're using. The good news is you can take the information in things like spreadsheets or export information from your existing systems and import them into another. So it can take a little while, but once you identify the basic way you want to organize your data,
Hmm.
then configuring it can be pretty quick, a month, and then it becomes the migration of data and cleaning it, and that can take another month or two. And once you have that in place, then you can really leverage not just things like AI, but analytics and reporting and AI. Everything comes together much more easily once all the data is in one place.
Hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I would assume that becomes exponentially more difficult the more data you're migrating, right?
It
And
does.
more systems it's coming in from.
Right.
And there's also the retraining of all the users associated with, understanding and working within a new workflow, which I think is also a big, big, big piece of it. That I think a lot of organizations, not saying you, but a lot of
Mhm.
organizations I feel like overlook, and this is not just an AI problem, this is like a systems implementation problem, overlook
Mhm.
retraining their people and investing in that, and instead just like buy fancy toys that people end up not using.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, training is critical, and I think there's another interesting thing here going on, which is um, the expectations of what software does for you and your control of it is also changing, right? I mean, on the one hand, you have like when we're working with clients, some clients are are really have a very simple technology implementation, and their ability to leverage a lot of new technology is pretty low, right? They're smaller offices, not a lot of technical expertise in-house, manual systems, and AI. They're trying to use it, but they also are doing a lot on spreadsheets, for example.
Mhm.
And we have other clients that say, hey, I want this new feature. By the way, I have used Claude Code and prepared a document that can be used to vibe code this new feature that I'm looking for. And
Mhm.
here it is. Can you put this together? Can you build it, or should we build it? And I think that is going to increasingly be a model that um, companies expect technology providers to adapt to,
Mhm.
which is I now have the ability to not just um, gather business requirements, but I have the ability to uh, vibe code a prototype of how I want it to work,
Mhm.
right? And as these AI tools and tools like Cursor and Claude Code get better and better, companies are going to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
And where we see things transforming is for companies like Clara is it's going to be just as important for us to have incredible features that are helpful within our system and innovation that we build or that our users can adopt. It's going to be just as important to have a platform that is adaptable for clients to build on.
Hmm.
And that to me is a really exciting area to move into where, part of our part of what we've built is a tremendous multi-tenant secure architecture for case management and collaboration for
Hmm.
large scale litigation. It's that back end platform that is difficult for our clients to replicate.
Uh-huh.
And we want to make it easier and easier for them to just build new functionality right on top of Clara.
That's awesome. Yeah. So like
It's really cool.
yeah, platform
Yeah.
where you give everybody the access to the standalone, but then you can essentially create your own tools on top of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's going to be the model for software and systems is, you're going to have basic functionality. It's going to have to connect to MCP servers that can handle AI workflows,
Hmm.
and clients are going to expect to build on the platform themselves. They're not going to want to wait for you anymore.
Yeah.
They're going to have people in house who understand how to not just gather business requirements, but translate those into software requirements and actually be able to code things themselves in days, not a year. A
Right.
year of IT development for an application, those days are gone, and companies aren't going to want that. And I can see very, you know, ephemeral application development where you can develop purpose-built applications that your company needs for a particular project, use it for that time period, and then you don't need that anymore and you can build another one, right?
Right.
You shouldn't have to use you know um, build tools manually or try to use an Airtable or a spreadsheet yourself. You should be able to build an application that's useful,
Hmm. Absolutely.
which I think, yeah, it's going to be transformational. But the whole interesting thing is, on the one hand, that's an incredible, I think, future to think about. And I think we're going to get there. On the other hand, you have a big part of the market that is um, still stuck with very manual, siloed data, and it's going to be hard for those companies to move quickly.
Absolutely. I'm sure it will be. Yeah, I'm sure it absolutely will be hard for those companies to move quickly, especially as you look at, you know, the speed at which everything continues to move, right? If you told me a year ago that this is how far we would have come, I'm not, I mean, I'm not saying I would have disbelieved you, but it's not like, yeah, it's pretty unbelievable that the rate of change and how quickly everything's continuing to move and evolve. And I think that one of the
Hmm.
major, I think so. I think like these large organizations, right? You look at like the Microsofts of the world, right? The Googles of the world, but also some of these other larger organizations in not in the technology space, right? Medical space, they
Hmm.
one of the major advantages that they have is the amount of data that they have to train AI systems for them specifically. But
Right.
the major disadvantage is just how fragmented it all is.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
I think that it's a very
Yeah.
interesting dichotomy to look at.
Yeah, it is. What's interesting also is that the systems themselves, the LLMs themselves, are just getting smarter and smarter
Hmm.
and cheaper, right? So 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, the cost of a million tokens was $20, for a million tokens for using an AI system. Now it's down to like $1.50 for uh, your um, uh, your input tokens. And there are some models like some of the GPT mini models that are down to 15 to 20 cents, 25 cents per million tokens. And that will continue to get cheaper and cheaper. And the models will get smarter and smarter. So to me, with something like that, it'll be more like thinking about um, compute infrastructure
Mhm.
when you could use Amazon, and instead of thinking about buying a server, you were thinking about, is this going to be 7 or 15 cents per CPU hour? We're going to get to similar economics in AI where it just becomes like turning on the water faucet
Mhm.
to get processing power, right? And it's going to be built into everything that you have, just that capability.
Mhm.
So training models and using your data is always going to be important, but the models themselves are also just going to get smarter and smarter, smarter and smarter, given that they're also dealing with a lot of data.
Absolutely, and I think that it's a lot of the use cases that a lot of things that people love to talk about is the language models, right? But I think the
Hmm.
agentic side is really where things are going to start getting really fascinating. And I know you guys have the like an orchestrator model internally. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I thought that was really cool in our initial conversation.
Yeah, yeah. So we have uh, uh, our own AI that's built into Clara to help with making things more efficient. Being able to instead of creating a time slip, attorneys track time. Instead of creating a time slip manually, you can just talk into Clara and say, I spent 3 hours preparing for depositions for the Infinity Motors case, and it'll just create it in 3 seconds, right? Or pre-filling things out when you're working with data. But we also have an AI assistant that we are uh, going to be rolling out that has a basically an orchestrator that works with um, to take in a prompt, and it talks to our MCP server and talks directly to Clara, and can leverage different agents that we've built
Mhm.
to optimize things. So you can do everything that you think about doing in Claude Code or ChatGPT, you can do in the assistant, except that it's acting directly on Clara data. So it's really generative and agentic AI acting on the data in Clara, your data in Clara. And it's pretty mind blowing what you can do because um, you can ask it questions, and you can ask it very complex questions. And with, for example, like with Claude, all of the new plugins and skills that they rolled out, we can just leverage that.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's the way it's going. And it's while there are a lot of specialized tools that leverage AI out there, there are
Mhm.
very few things that I've found you can't do just with a a set of skills that you've built into more of a chat interface. The
Mhm.
output is phenomenal. Yeah.
Absolutely. And how do you how do you think how should we as consumers think about the trade-off between full context LLM reasoning versus just the structured API driven retrieval that you're doing?
Um, so um, that's a good question. It's a good question, and it's something that we've kind of worked with over the last several years, and we lean much more toward leveraging the APIs now rather than focusing on the LLM. So, a few years ago, the model was to leverage an LLM and to have your content uploaded as a big data source, vectorize it, index it, understand it, and then build a lot of the fine-tuned system prompts to be able to engage with your data, right? And it was heavily leveraging your prompt optimization and the LLM itself in a pretty raw way.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very difficult road because it
Mm-hmm.
didn't work very well. It was slow. When you dealt with really large amounts of data, the LLM couldn't find the context
Mm-hmm.
without a lot of work. And um, but now today, the model is much more around being able to connect up your data. You probably have APIs to connect to your data, your application
Mm-hmm.
that can be turned into an MCP, and you can use these AI APIs to interface with your data. And I think that has been much more effective,
Mm-hmm.
and for Clara, much more token efficient, right? So, for example, we can handle a lot of the heavy data filtering
Mm-hmm.
through in our platform,
Yep.
right? And then reduce the amount of input data that you're actually delivering ultimately to the LLM
Mm-hmm.
to process. So I think that combination of using the API and the AI and MCP server really talking directly to your system is just much more efficient,
Mm-hmm.
and you can end up leveraging all of the skills and advanced um, improvements in Claude and Gemini and Chat GPT
Yep.
directly.
Absolutely, man. And having worked so deeply within cybersecurity and OT environments previously
Yeah,
yourself, which I think is a background that some, but not all folks in this space have. What
yeah,
how does that background and how does that shape how you think about AI risk? And
hmm
especially in places like legal where the data is highly sensitive data. How do you think about that, and how do you manage that risk for folks?
yeah. So prior I headed up uh, uh, well, I worked for an embedded cybersecurity company. So we built embedded security software that went in chips and um, on on jet engines, the F-35, a lot of different systems, cars.
Hmm.
And I think when you look at cybersecurity through the lens of more industrial cybersecurity, um, you really are a lot more paranoid about how a single uh, gap in security can impact a whole system,
Hmm.
right? And the broader impact of that. In thinking about our system and also the use of AI, it is the kind of from my view, there's always a belts and suspenders approach. You have to have multiple ways of securing everything and fallback mechanisms. And in using AI, it's always either AI led and human verified, or human led and AI verified. But there always has to be a human in the loop at this stage, just because of the risks and because of the potential broad impacts on not just integrity of data, but also on what the systems can do.
Hmm.
So we tend to leverage, AI certainly throughout our company and operationally, but it's pretty locked down, and the scenarios that we use it for are well defined.
Yeah, no, and I love the security first approach because I think that that's something that's too often overlooked or thought about from a secondary perspective. And that is just so much potential for damage. And especially in these industries like legal and in the OT space as well with critical infrastructure where you're like you can really damage a lot of stuff if you overlook or miss things, and especially as you look at a lot of these, Anthropic's Mythos tool, and like
Yeah,
that one's the
right,
best. That one's the best in the world, apparently, right? I haven't.
right.
I don't know, but if that one's the best in the world, and say you're able to find 300 vulnerabilities in a technology stack, the
Right.
number two tool can probably get you to at least 250, right? So,
Yeah.
and how do you think that again with your background here, how do you think these AI tools that are detecting vulnerabilities, how does that fundamentally change the cybersecurity game?
Well, I mean, I think in uh in many ways it's you have to, in security, you're always, we call it chasing the bad, right? You're always chasing the bad guy. The bad guy is always a step or two ahead
Hmm.
because you're focused on things like detection, and to detect it, something has to happen first. So a lot of cybersecurity kind of models and security controls are built around fundamentally this notion of always chasing the bad guy,
Hmm.
detecting them, keeping them out, blocking them, and remediating. Um, when you think about the leveraging AI, um, the AI system can detect vulnerabilities. It can um, detect vulnerabilities and act upon them, or use them and leverage them to get into systems. So it is uh, it's kind of a different model,
Hmm.
but I think all companies, they need to have both they need to be leveraging AI defensively, um, to protect themselves and to find vulnerabilities faster than their adversaries do,
Hmm.
and also there's a lot of uh, penetration testing that needs to be done leveraging these systems, which you can do, even today at expert levels. Um, yeah. So,
Yeah, man. No, I think that it's fascinating to watch all this change, right? And again, like we were talking about earlier, the rate of change as it relates to this. I think one of the major things with these AI tools is it's really lowering the skill cap required and the resource requirements to hack companies, right? You don't need, say, a nation
mhm.
state's resources anymore. You can probably do it in your basement if you try hard enough. And that's not a comment on me being in my basement and me thinking about that, man.
Right, right, yeah. Right, right.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that it lowers it for anything, these um coding in general, and developing applications to penetrate systems. I mean, the bar is much lower now. Now you can do a lot of that stuff on your own, right? So, and
absolutely.
faster.
100%. And I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of hype right now around agentic, right? No matter what the use case is.
Hmm.
It's it's like cyber attacks, cyber defense, any of the other cases we've been talking about. What do you think is real and will be real as it relates to that in the next 2 to 3 years versus what's way overhyped right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so agentic, there are a lot of pieces to that. So there are tools like OpenClaw and N8N,
Mhm.
and ChatGPT just came out with agents, and you can build agents within Claude. But these agents basically just can take multiple steps in a workflow, and you can schedule them to do things, and they can interact with your applications, right?
Mhm.
Some of it via your desktop applications, some via cloud applications. But basically, you can set it up in a very simple way to do things. that would otherwise need to be done manually or triggered off of something. And you can just explain what you want it to do, and it'll kind of build it and run it. There are also just the agentic side of leveraging AI, which is different than generative. Whereas generative is going to create a lot of the summaries, create content.
Mhm.
The agentic side is about being able to take action.
Mhm.
So in systems like ours, that means being able to update fields, create tasks automatically, create deadlines automatically that can be, found in documents and court documents that come in. So there's that agentic side, and I think that we're in very early days of companies leveraging the agentic side because they've been so focused on using it for generative type of use cases. And I think it's huge. I think it's going to be, I think, um, early applications like if then that and um, uh, other other systems that you could automate. They're going to be more personalized tools that people will have. People are already running their own, open claw deployments to run that. And I think companies will probably move a bit more cautiously um, on leveraging agentic workflows, but it's definitely a big part of the advantage. Um, I think there's also something else that we look at, even beyond agentic workflows, which is more scheduling those
Mhm.
and being able to have more what I call ambient AI, which is um, being able to have AI watching your systems and being able to alert you of things.
Mhm.
For example, let me know when you find documents that have dates that should be calendared that aren't calendared in our system, or, you know, find anomalies in data and let me know, um, where those are, or when things look like they've been filed in the wrong matter. So all of these things can just, I call it more ambient AI, where it's like having an analyst um, just constantly looking at your data all the time for inconsistencies or ways that provide insight.
Mhm. Absolutely. And the ambient thing is really interesting. Where it's just watching either your system or watching you or or watching your systems or watching your personal use and logging and creating tasks based on your usage. I do have concerns about data privacy as it relates to that though,
Hmm.
especially as for personal use. And then but I don't know. It's that's a whole other conversation though around
Yeah, yeah.
data privacy. Um,
Hmm.
as sitting in the space where you are around legal data and AI, what do you think some of the biggest unseen risks are that people aren't talking about yet?
I think one of the big risks are AI governance and AI use policies.
Hmm.
You have a lot of people at companies, just like college students, just leveraging AI on their own,
Hmm.
and companies haven't controlled that, and they're not sure how all of their employees are using it.
Hmm.
So I think one of the risks um, are companies without, you know, very thoughtful and complete AI policies and
Hmm.
controls.
Hmm.
So, and the AI policies in the legal space also extend into just even just rules that need to be followed about um, uh, to be compliant.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of compliance there,
Hmm.
and so I think one is, the use policies and controls, and I think the other is um, there are there are not the granular levels of controls, I think, in these systems. that extend to how enterprises use AI. For example, in uh, in Claude, you can connect. You have these connectors. You can connect Claude to a bunch of different applications, but there isn't that level of control and application permission and granular controls that you think of when you're using, like, adding an application to Microsoft 365
Hmm.
or Google Workspace, right? So it's still very loosey goosey right now. Connect your app, and boom, you've just connected your enterprise data to some application
Hmm.
that you haven't vetted, right? It could just be collecting
Hmm.
data.
Yeah.
So those security controls and everything from anything beyond using kind of basic OAuth
Hmm.
um, isn't really there now. You
Yeah.
know, in when you connect up, when you add an app in Azure, for example, you have several different keys and permissions that you have to put in place to connect an app into the Microsoft 365 network.
Hmm.
So I think that's a big risk, not having adequate security and robust security controls in connecting applications to AI systems. And and I think just
Yeah.
training. You got loads of training on security and cybersecurity training on things like phishing and being careful of spam and
Hmm.
being social engineering and all of that stuff. But you don't have a lot of great cybersecurity training on AI yet, and I
Yeah.
think that so.
No, 100%. You're right, man. And it's again going back to people being the weakest link in the organizations, right?
Mhm.
From a cybersecurity perspective anyway, is you click the wrong button and you authorize the wrong app in, and I know shadow IT has been a huge problem for organizations for a long time. I'm sure shadow AI is going to be even a larger problem for organizations, especially with the, limited ability that we have to track all of those things. There's some very cool tools out there that do that, but there's not. I feel like it's an underappreciated, undervalued space of understanding what AI is on your, organizations, on your environment.
Sure, sure. I mean, and I think that goes hand in hand with um, compliance standards like ISO 27001, SOC 2,
Hmm.
HIPAA. They all of those, US data privacy, all of those really need to be revised with more comprehensive AI specific security controls, policies,
Hmm.
processes, all of those things, right? Right now, those are also still very, very light, in my opinion, in
Hmm.
those standards.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, as we're getting ready to wrap up, man, I have one more question for you. But I know you mentioned that you're starting to talk to government and government adjacent folks to
Mhm.
sell into the federal space. As somebody who's done both in the commercial and the federal side, for folks that have only been on the commercial side, man, what do you think has surprised folks about selling into the federal government?
I mean, I think a couple things. One is they have very similar problems to any enterprise. You think of them as, um, uh, you know, as a very different entity, but in reality, they have a lot of just the same basic challenges as any enterprise. They also have the challenge of upgrading systems. Oftentimes, they are not able to upgrade systems as quickly as they would like because of just security and security requirements.
Hmm.
I think the other is selling into the government space. You really need great partners.
Yeah.
We work with a number. Parasoft is one of them, and but they are essential to being able to engage with and enable procurement by government. Whether it's SLED or federal. you've
Hmm.
got to have all of that kind of locked down and work with them very closely. Um, because it can be very overwhelming. The number of opportunities
Hmm.
to provide to follow up with,
Oh yeah.
and and you really need the guidance of partners.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I completely agree with you, man. Anything else? Anything additional points you'd like to make? Anything I missed? Anything I forgot to ask you that I was supposed to?
Gosh, no, I mean, as usual, it's I think with your background and my background, we've spanned a lot of different areas.
Hmm.
Um, but from my perspective, I just think it's a very exciting time right now.
Hmm.
And I think it's going to force a lot of folks into, being out of their comfort zone for a little while. But within several years, we'll settle into um, uh, a, a more defined model where people will see where we're going a bit better. And I just encourage companies to embrace it and get started now to get organized and prepare for really a pretty transformational change of technology.
1,000%. I like to tell people that you don't want to be the last person to adopt email. This is the same thing about it. AI is the same thing. It's more transformational for how we're going to work than email was and continues to be. Yeah, man, I'm right there with you. And thank you so much for coming on, man. I've had a really, really great time chatting with you today.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Nick. Great to chat, and let's catch up again sometime soon.
Looking forward to it. And everybody out there, thank you so much for listening. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Talk to everybody soon.